to Deck Talk, where you will be prepared. Today we're going to have a special guest. He's the Wrangler of Random, the heroic free-to-play champion, the master of the almond milk, the one, the only, Noxious.
Happy to be here. What is this? First show
Second
I'll
show.
do?
Second.
Hopefully, yeah, first one for me, but like hopefully it's going to be a long sequence of them. I can show up on a few because the deck ideas I've got. Many of them.
Yeah, now Noxious, I do a lot of playtesting with you here and there, and you always come up with some of the most what the fuck decks that just catch me off guard and just kill me.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily good, right? Like some of them don't necessarily fit any metagame. I'm just building that for fun, like Farsight, Sea Giant, Shaman. Like,
yeah,
I will do that, but it's not necessarily something I'd, now, showcase to anyone.
Weren't you running that same kind of Crusher Shaman gimmick where oh, by the way, this Elemental won't go away, but did it with the Giants in that as well?
Yeah, Ancestral Spirit with the Sea Giants. That thing was glorious.
For you, it was horrible for me.
Yeah, it was really good. It was really good. It's fun. It's fun.
I felt like a little school kid on the first day.
Yeah,
it was horrible. It was horrible.
As you should.
Now, Noxious, I've been actually watching you since like middle of May of last year, and your content you put out then. And
sounds about right.
Yeah. I mean, that's what really got me peeked into Hearthstone. And it was just amazing. And then when the beta came out, I was lucky enough to get a key, and you were part of a group that was running tournaments at the time, and I really wanted to go and play in a tournament, see where I stood, got the living crap knocked out of me, but it was a good time.
Yeah, it was fun. Like those early times I look back on with fondness.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, mid-range, Warlock.
Who would have thought that existed? By the gods. Yeah.
But it was viable back then.
Yeah, so, and now we just need to adapt to Zoo, right? That's pretty much all there is.
Well, I have a solution for Zoo, but I think it's illegal in pretty much every state.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
All right.
It's not kind.
No. Zoo's not going anywhere. As much as we'd like Zoo to go someplace, it's not going to go anywhere, and it actually serves a very viable point. It's pretty much become the MassEnchant test of a meta.
It is, right? Like a while back, like it used to be that if you couldn't build a deck that dealt with Sen'jin, Shieldmaster in any way, you were basically not viable in the metagame. Like it was impossible. And now it's like, can it beat Zoo? Because it's a huge portion of your potential matchups. If so, then move on. If not, then stay home. It's not going anywhere.
I think in most levels of play on the ladder, Zoo is about 30 to 40%.
Yeah, for ladder play, of course. I mean, tournament is very different. I mean, tournaments have a completely different metagame because, you can't rely... I mean, Zoo is still prevalent. I mean, it sees play in tournaments, but it's good against specific decks. It won't see play if you're facing too much counter decks. I've noticed that a lot in tournaments. It's very difficult.
All right. Now, speaking of decks, you brought us a deck, Feed the Spider. I love the name, by the way.
Yeah, it's weird.
This is a priest deck. It's kind of similar to a lot of other priest decks we've seen, but it has a few interesting little twists. And we're gonna get to that right now.
Yeah, it's kind of I mean, it's your standard priest deck, right? Because typically priest decks will run. I mean, they're very limited in the amount of cards. I'd say that they have room to take out and put in. Like, they're very combo-ish. We've seen that a lot, between Wild Pyromancer combos, with Circle of Healing, with, Holy Smite, Holy Nova. You need the Wild Pyromancer to do a lot of the job. Early game, you can wipe very easily with Wild Pyro, Powered Shield, and Holy Smite something. So that's always very, very good. And it feels like Priest has only so many ways they can go without, nerfing their deck to oblivion.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty much... I mean, this is obviously a variant on the basic backbone. Powered Shield, Northshire, Wild Pyro, 2 Shadow Word Death, Injured Blade Master, Alkanai, Holy Nova. Like, you've got all the kind of core cards there, but I decided I wanted to play around with the Nerubian Eggs, with Naxxramas being around the corner, and Mexna. Because when I saw her, I was like, this card is not... She's not, amazing. You could probably run other stuff in her place. I find that she's probably the most debatable choice in the deck. But overall, I think that having that extra late-game drop is something that I've learned to enjoy. So instead of putting 2 Holy Fires, I put out another Mexna. The deck was built initially to counter Zoo. Like that's the whole purpose of it. The whole purpose of this was, hey, I'm facing a Zoo heavy metagame with Nerubian Eggs and Void Terrors, and I can't take it anymore. Somebody save me, and I want to do it with Priest. Hence, I made that specific Priest deck. So Priest already counters Zoo in very many ways, but now it just does it, a little differently. And I think I wouldn't say better because it's just a different approach, but I think this one is a deck that can do that amazingly well for climbing ladder.
Now, I had a chance to put a lot of games in with this deck, both in casual and in rank, after testing out a couple concepts that weren't working for me. And I dropped horribly in ranked. And this actually helped bring me back up quite a bit in there.
All right.
And what I noticed was the moment the Naxxramas came out, people panicked. Not so much because it's a strong card, it's because they couldn't play anything because it was going to die. And they'd wasted removals, they'd wasted silences, they had nothing to deal with the Naxxramas. And you get so much value because you can heal it.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the whole point actually of Naxxramas, which is kind of funny because the point is that you take silences away from the Naxxramas by playing Nerubian Eggs and Defenders of Argus. I have one Defender, one Sun Fury. You could probably justify substituting those out if you don't have two Sun Furies, two Defenders. The earlier the taunt, the better, but sometimes the buffier the minion, the better. So I decided to go for one Defender to enable the egg through something else than the Wild Pyromancer AoE or the Akanai Circle of Healing kill. So by putting in Nerubian Eggs and the random taunt, you put a lot of removal away from Naxxramas, which when she drops makes her that much better. Now you have to be careful, of course. If you're facing another player with he's a priest, Shadow Word Pain just makes Naxxramas just becomes completely irrelevant. It happens that they have wasted the Shadow Word Pains already on something like Northshire Cleric or Wild Pyromancer. So sometimes you'll be able to get a nice Naxxramas unimpeded against a priest, but I'd say it's kind of rare. It's very, very rare that you'll get that. The deck was primarily made to deal with Zoo.
Right. Now, Cabal Shadow Priest obviously is like the biggest threat to the Naxxramas because, killing a Naxxramas, that's fine. Having it turned on you, not so fine.
Yeah, but you also have your own Cabal, right? Like, if you're the second, it's like the Ice Block play with Freeze Mages. It's like, if I pop your Ice Block first, then you have to pop mine, back. Whoever popped the first Ice Block first is going to win the war because he's got one turn ahead. So it's the same thing. You take my Naxxramas, fine. I'm the one who plays the last Cabal. I'll just get it back. So you don't mind too much.
Right.
Which is, I wouldn't say it's partly the reason I put the Cabal. I mostly put her there because, number one, she's always pretty solid. And in a Naxxramas, post-Nax metagame, where you see eggs and you see a lot of Harvest Golems being played by virtue of them just being great, I feel like Cabal is always going to be good in this metagame.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
so
I really like this.
One of the other little interesting side effects I noticed in this deck is there were so many viable threats to draw out a hard removal. Pop Nerubian Eggs were pulling removals. Aki Soul Priest were pulling removals. Injured Blade Masters were pulling removals. I couldn't figure this part out either.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, people still do because it is dangerous. I mean, they never know what you've got. There's soon. I mean, if you can ping their... Because that's the thing, against Zoo, you're happy to ping their minions for 2. You're happy to AoE their board out. So, Akanai is a threat. Injured is somewhat of a threat if it gets healed up too much against the Zoo deck. So, it feels like Priest is, by default, probably one of the better classes, I feel, to, maybe beyond Freeze Mage. It's one of the better classes to completely stop Zoo in their tracks.
Oh, yeah. But what I noticed was the last 2 cards of this deck, the Sylvanas Windrunner, and Ragnaros were, getting on the board unmolested by anything. No silences, no hard remove. It was like, okay, thank you. By the way, Zoo players hate Windrunner for one simple reason. They will not play their Doomguard. And if they do, they have to injure it on something else. They can't take it to your face because you'll sack just to take it and then hit them in the face. So it's really good. It throws their tempo right out the window.
Yeah, Shadow Word Death, that thing. And if you can't get it, you just Shadow Word Death it.
Exactly.
That's why I removed Shadow Word Pain from the deck because I found between silences and the Wild Pyros, because the thing is, with the addition of silences, it gives you extra Wild Pyromancer triggers that are very easy to pull off. So I found it very, very simple to just wipe the board constantly, even if you don't necessarily have Akanai Circle. There's a few ways you can do it. And I realized that, very quickly, Akanai is a big threat. Shadow Word Death will deal with Doomguards, and so will Sylvanas. So you have pretty much the whole range of Zoo covered between a few combinations, and you can taunt up in case you're desperate. it's just I don't know. It just feels good.
Right.
But it is a very like I'd say it's a deck that's more fitting, for tournament plays against something that you might expect like as a counterplay to someone who's playing Zoo, or on the other end of the spectrum, a metagame that is dominated by Zoo. You bring that in, I think you'll do pretty okay.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Well, I noticed I had a lot of success with this against like Fast Druid or Tokeny Burst Druids. This was
Yeah.
handling it very nicely and was shutting them down.
Yeah.
Warrior Control gave me a little bit of a hiccup. Backspace Road
yeah.
was nothing.
Control Warrior is just overall as a priest, it's a tough matchup. Because they actually have bigger threats than you do, and they have just as much survivability. And that's the issue. Like their hero power is even better than yours because they go beyond 30. So for the entirety of the game, you're just healing up for 2 while they're just arming up beyond 30. So there's very little ways to beat Control Warrior. And if you do, you generally it's not impossible. It's just a really tough matchup in general.
Right. But the one deck that was consistently just kicking the crap out of this was anything with the word Mage in it.
Interesting. Well, I can't see you having a kill on Mage, I guess.
It's
not Mage. I mean, the only Mage deck that I see this beating is what's called Canker Mage by Duckwing Face. Like he was, I think. I mean, you remember the aggro Mage deck from Moon back in the early stages of Hearthstone.
Yeah. That was
so
great.
Take that and adapt it to the meta. Add in Archmage Antonitis, and it's aggro Mage. And if you face aggro Mage, this deck stomps it, because it can't get you low enough because they don't run Naxxramas. But Freeze Mage is going to give you a run for your money. I don't even think you can win against Freeze Mage.
You can't.
Unless you're getting... I mean, no. I can't even think of a way for you to do that.
This deck only has 3 viable ways of dealing with the Giants.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't see how you're supposed to. They have too much AoE, too much removal. Yeah. Don't even try. Some decks have a blind spot. I think this one is, Freeze Mage by a long shot.
Oh, 100% agreeing with you on that one. Paladins also give it a little bit of a heartburn, but not by much.
Control Pally, mid-range Pally. I would assume mid-range Control would probably be a tough matchup, but aggro like Shockedin should be fine.
Oh, Shockedin, it takes a crap all over it. But
it's funny, right?
But like the Kalento mid-range with the
goodbye.
No.
You can't win. You have no lethal ever.
No, you never do. You never do.
Which also brings me to that one extra thing that I kind of debated upon for a long time, which is Maxland Rag. A mind control instead. I mean, it's either Sylvanas or Rag. A mind control instead of either of those. It was something I considered for a long time because you will be dealing against control decks or mid-range decks with bigger threats in the late game, and can you really afford not taking those? And what I realized is the deck is so heavily specialized against aggro. I won't sacrifice that to maybe get a better matchup against control later. So I kept Rag in as a kind of versatile mind control. To an extent, it's better. It doesn't mind control, sorry, but it's better suited against any deck, whether facing mid-range, control, or aggro. It's better than a mind control in that specific slot.
Well, what I really loved about Rag in this deck, especially against Zoo players, is you YOLO Rag this, they wipe their own board just to deal with Rag.
Yeah, they trade everything into it, and then you're safe.
Yeah.
For the rest of the game, if you're not already safe by that point.
Exactly.
Which you should be anyway. But yeah, it's quite good. Yeah, I'd say. Yes. I really like it.
I'm all about manipulating my opponent's plays.
Yep. Silence, I think you could maybe remove one for something else. The only card I find that people are probably looking at and are very confused is Blood Mage Thalnos. I treat it as a third Wild Pyromancer because you have to keep in mind, in this deck, we're not running Thought Steals. It's something that a lot of priests do. We're not running Azure Drakes, which is also pretty damned good in Priest. We're not running those not because they're not good cards, but because for the purpose of defeating Zoo, Azure Drake gives me, card draw, a very easily soul fireable minion, whereas Blood Mage gives me the extra card draw and a stronger Holy Nova or Holy Smite, which I generally value more because it costs less, so I can combo it with Smite or Nova a lot earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's kind of weird like that. It's a third Wild Pyro in my mind a lot of the time.
It really is. It really is. Not to mention the fact that if you have it on the board and you have the Wild Pyromancer as well, you're going to get that. Plus the Wild Pyromancer, plus a card draw.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And the good thing about the Holy Nova, once you have the Alchemy as well, is, it'll kill your own eggs. Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's something that people don't necessarily realize, but you can ping your own eggs by having an Alchemy out, and you just break them, and then, you're not in a bad position, necessarily. I kind of like that.
Yeah, it was really nice. It's really nice. The silences, I think, need to stay just because eggs exist.
Yep, I agree. I agree, especially against the decks that we're trying to beat. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Alrighty then. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Anything you'd like to say?
Not
Before we...
really. All I can say is don't expect this deck to win against, some non-zoo. Like, if you're facing an aggressive metagame, you'll do fine. If you're not, though, I would maybe stray away from it, and you could consider subbing out a silence, sorry, for a Shadow Word Pain if you feel like that's necessary, and you feel like you need the removal more than the silence itself. So I feel like, yeah, the deck is good against aggro metagames. Don't try it in anything mid-range or late game. You're not gonna like it, not even one bit.
Alright. I think that about does it. Thank you very much, Noxious, for coming down. I hope to have you back on here soon.
Pleasure.
All right. Can you give us your trademark finish?
JJ.
I love that. All right. This is the Shiv. If you like this, like, subscribe, whatever. Also, don't forget to check out MassEnchant.com. Go there. They're running weekly tournaments, giving away $20 on the NA server battle funds. So check that out. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, this is the Shiv. Thank you for watching Deck Talk. Bye-bye.